Good evening, and thanks for joining tonight's TI Technology webinar hosted by Texas Instruments. Where tonight we're going to take a look at not just the top 5, but the top 5.25 tips to increase student success on the ACT math test. My name is Mike Houston, and I'm the moderator for this event. I teach algebra and calculus near Pittsburgh, where I use TI Technology to make tough-to-teach, tough-to-learn concepts accessible to all our students. And with us tonight is Tom Reardon. Tom is a longtime teacher and currently works for Texas Instruments in product strategy and development. Tom, would you like to maybe talk through some of the agenda points for tonight?
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So tonight we're going to get ACT essential facts at first, and experience ACT test taking and prep strategies. We're going to do some actual 2021 ACT test items, some with multiple pass solutions. You're going to be able to obtain 4 complete 2021 ACT exams with the answers, including the reading and science, which more interested in the math, I'm sure, and a bonus feature if time allows. So, and I guess we're having a webinar drawing. What's that for, Mike, at the end?
Yeah, one lucky winner in attendance tonight is going to receive a registration for the T-Cubed International Conference, which is virtual this July. So stick around.
Okay.
Tonight we'll be using the chat window to send general messages. And if you have any questions for Tom, feel free to use the Q&A window on the right side of your screen. And lastly, as a reminder, the session is being recorded. And we'll provide a link to the event certificate of attendance at the conclusion of the webinar. All right, Tom, you have control. Feel free to share your screen.
Okay. And I'm hoping that shows.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. And hello, everybody from Columbus, Ohio. That's where I am right now. So this is what the advertisement said. As you know, I do like to start off with a quote, and I have a couple of quotes to start with today. The human brain is awesome. It functions 24 hours a day from the day we were born and only stops when we're taking an exam or fall in love. So I found that quote. I thought that was appropriate for the test taking part. And I was at a butterfly museum today, or not today, Sunday in Columbus. I took this picture. I love the symmetry. So that's all there is for that. I just thought it would be a nice thing to share with somebody there. All right, so the top 5.25 tips to increase student success. First of all, you're going to hear me say think graphically and also by table. The power of visualization cannot be underestimated. Students need to be very comfortable with whatever calculator they use to use it effectively and effortlessly. So the more they use it, the more they're going to be able to use it on the test. But also, we don't want to just use it as an answer getter, but also as a teaching and learning tool. And you'll see me talk about that. Though I am going to talk about answer getters as well, because this is a very high stakes test for our students. We suggest that you do at least 1 problem per day beginning in Algebra 1 of the ACT test, because their test questions are so much different than what we ask on our tests and even what textbooks do. If the calculator does not help, do not use it. And the 5.25 is we need to, well, that was the only 1/4 of it. So sorry, that was all we got. But we need to, we do need to. All right, so PowerPoint, let me show the PowerPoint with some facts that I want to share with you. So this is some ACT test information, 60 questions in 60 minutes. That's 1 minute per question, right? And that's a big resounding no. The test questions go from easy to difficult. And so we suggest that the first third of the questions, you try to allot about 30 seconds per question on average. The middle third, about 60 seconds, and that gives you 90 seconds on the final third, which are usually more difficult. That's not a hard and fast rule, because it could be you could have number 58, you get done in 30 seconds. That's fine, okay? But we're just saying on average. So 30, 60, 90 is the suggestion. And where have we seen that before? So calculator information, can use a graphing calculator on every single question. Sometimes it's quicker, sometimes it isn't. It varies for each student. okay, for each personality. And so we suggest not only to teach how to use the calculator on the test, but how to use it to help teach the concepts daily, okay? Conceptual understanding. Use the calculator as a teaching and learning tool daily. Standardize exams, assess the topics that we teach, but boy, do they ask questions differently from how we do and how textbooks ask questions. And from my perspective, this needs to change. And one of the ways you do it is to do a problem every day. They get familiar with how their questions are asked. So it's not a quick fix, but to help students understand the math better and longer. And I'm going to go back to my Algebra 2 and geometry teacher from high school, Mr. Erickson. We would say, you know, can you help us get into college? And he would surprise us with this. He would say, I'm not trying to get you into college. I'm trying to get you out. So thank you, Mr. Erickson. So here's how I like to use the graphing calculator, and you'll see me use these some ways as a teaching tool, as a learning tool, as a discovery tool. Look for patterns, discover formulas, check answers, visualize graphs, visualize solving equations, and solve tougher application problems that are impossible to solve by what we would call by hand. And I also like to use this as a tool to review concepts, electronic flashcards. So with that, let's go ahead and get into this here. Let me close this out here. And there we go. So there's my list. So how I prepared for tonight's webinar, I took the 4 recent ACT tests from 2021, the math part anyway. So 240 problems done in various ways. And then I cut each question out and sorted the problems into piles of similar type problems. So this is what my desk looked like a couple days ago when I was doing this. And if they, you know, tried to keep them together, which ones were the biggies and so on. So, so this is more of a see what is possible session. It's not a training session on either of the calculators. So since I may be going too fast, what I did do is I pre-did all the problems using both the 84 CE and the TI-Nspire CX and created a PDF with all those solutions. So if you can't keep up, and that's probably the case, you have access to those solutions and go at your own pace. I'm also supplying a PDF of all the problems that we do, so that if you want to do these with your students starting tomorrow, just print them out or put them up on your screen or whatever, you've got them. And so I'm also applying a PDF of each of the 4 entire 2021 ACT tests with answers. Those will be available on the website as well. Okay, so I try to give as much information as I can. Hopefully you can use it. Okay. Now I will tell you some of the things I'm going to show you are shortcuts and say, ooh, I don't want my students to do that all the time. I agree with you, but on this high stakes test, if I can give them something, you know, to help them, I'm going to do that. Okay. But there are some things I'd say, I don't want my students to use a calculator on this type problem on my exams, but stay with me. All right. So important, I'd like to get your feedback here. If you are, I'd like to see what my audience is. If you're more of an 84 person, type in 84 in the chat. That's all you have to type. If you're inspired, just type the capital letter N. And if it's either, you feel with it, go with an E. Okay. So I want to get an idea of what our audience is. I've done all the problems on both calculators. I just need to know which one I need to, you know, spend, I don't want to say more of the time, but emphasize maybe a little bit more. So we able to, I didn't see the chat. Let me just look at it real quickly here. So E's coming in, a couple N's here. Predominantly 84, okay. So most of you who are 84s, be kind when I do inspire things, please, okay? And those you inspire people, you may get mad at me because I didn't spend enough time on inspire, but you're going to see the solutions that way. So thank you for voting, by the way, being very un-American and voting, most of you. That was great, okay? I wish all Americans voted all the time. All right, so we're going to start with the second most often topic that I found on those 4 ACT tests. something straightforward, very simple, and that is surprisingly fractions and mixed numbers. Okay, second most. We'll get to the first most later. So here's a sample question number 6. I forget which one it was, which of the 4 tests of 2021. But I'm only giving you enough time to read the problem and maybe start thinking about the solution. I want to show you my ways of doing it that at least using a calculator or whatever. So don't be offended if you don't have enough time to do it. That's not the plan. Okay. So you got about 15 more seconds to read that question. All right, well, it's nice that nobody got a D or an F. That's a good thing to see. So on this one here, let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. Okay. All right, so one of the ways I would do this is say, well, we start with 180 students, and then I'm going to subtract a fourth of 180. So I'm going to use alpha x t theta n. You'll notice when I press those two keys together, I get a fraction template. And then I can put in the 1/4. And then I'm going to get out of the denominator and say times the 180. So 1/4 of them are being taken out for the A's, and then minus a third of the 180. So this time I'll show you another way to get the fraction template. Alpha y equals also has a bunch of fraction things in it. And the first one is the fraction template, 1/3. And then get out from the denominator times 180. And so I'm doing exactly what they said and just illustrating the fraction template. And 75, of course, is our answer. And I'll pull that screenshot off, and there's our answer. Now, I could have done this another way. I could have also added the fourth and the third and then subtracted that. In fact, I think I will illustrate that one. So let me just show you that again. So I'll take a fourth. And notice I prefer to write it as a fraction only because when I write it as a fraction, it'll stay as a fraction. And if I write it as a division problem, it'll go to a decimal. And I prefer to use fractions when I can. So I'll add those two together. And now I want to take 180 times that. And so I'm being lazy. I'll just say times. And then right above the negative sign, I press second negative sign. And it says, give me the last answer. And it'll automatically substitute 7/12 there. And then I get the same answer. Whoop. Did I goof? Oh, yes. I don't want, wait a minute, 7/12, 75. How did that happen? Oh, that doesn't look right. Huh. Now that is throwing me. 180 times 7/12. So somebody was saying you prefer to write the 7 divided by 12. Okay.
Tom, we're
Why am
getting
I?
some chats there suggesting that you subtract 188 minus 105.
Oh, that's right. Those are the number of students that got A's and B's. Right. Okay. But why did this work before? This is goofing me. Okay. So yeah, 180 minus the 105 give me 75. But okay. All right. Well, that's not a good way to start, right? Okay, but hang with me. Inspire people, again, the same way. Okay, the same way here. Um, very similar, so I don't need to show you that, I don't think. Okay. Um, the next one is number 32 from one of those tests. This one's a little, well, go ahead, look at it. So for this one here, let me clear. So what I need to do is add those three fractions and divide it into 4 equal parts. So again, I'm going to start off with a fraction and then add fractions in the numerator. Okay, so I'm going to have like a complex fraction, so to speak. So I've got the 1/4, which I will put in, and then add to that the 1/2. So get a fraction template again, and then get outside the fraction and then add the 4/5. And then I'm going to divide this into 4 equal parts. And this is not something I don't think students would normally write on their papers. Okay, I think they would add those fractions separately and then divide by 4 or multiply by 1/4 or whatever. But this will do it all at one time, getting a kind of an unusual answer, I think, 31/80. Not a number that I use very often. Okay. And on Inspire, and by the way, in order for students to feel comfortable with this, they need to use it daily. So it's not like something you say, I'll just teach you how to use a calculator the day before. They need to have ease of use, okay? Need to feel comfortable with it. And the Inspire, again, would be done just about the same way. The only thing on the Inspire, it's control division. That is the fraction template. Control division is the fraction template, and then you can do some things with that. Okay. All right, number 3, Olga worked on a project for 4.5 hours on each of 6 work days. The 7th day, she only worked a third of the time she had worked each of the previous days. Okay, how many hours did it take to complete the project? Now, the reason I want to show this one is the 84 does have a mixed number capabilities in it. And so that would be under alpha y equals. And you can see it here in number 2. So I can write 4 as the whole number, and then 1/2, 4.5. And I need to multiply that by the 6 work days, plus, and then she's going to do a third times a 4.5. So again, I'll get the fraction template, 1/3, and multiply that by the 4.5, which again is found in the alpha y equals fraction template, mixed number template, 4.5. I could have also used a distributive property here as well. Some of you probably pointed out and said, couldn't you just done, distributive property? Answers absolutely. Okay, and so I get this number. Now I would like to make that into a mixed number also, and that would be under alpha y equals, only it's the third option. So it says take the last answer and convert that to a mixed number. And if you would like a decimal, you can also do that with the 4th option. And then you can go back and forth with that and so on. So again, some of your, and this wasn't a hard one because 4.5 isn't really too bad. Some people would even use 4.5. The 1/3 using 0.3 won't really work. And then you'll notice on my answer sheets that you're getting, by the way, you're getting these. I'm trying to give you a hint as to where these things are if you're not familiar, okay? And I should point on Inspire, there is no mixed number. So what you need to do, one of the ways to do 4.5 instead of a decimal is the quantity of 4 plus a half times 6 plus a third times the quantity of 4 plus a half, okay? And here again, convert to decimal does not have a mixed number one for Inspire. This one is a kind of a complicated one. Let me give you a few seconds to read it, okay? You can see why it's number 51. So again, this one is a little bit nasty because of the reading, okay? So one of the ways you could do this, let me press clear, is that we want to know how many people we're going to start with, how many are summoned. So let's maybe let X be that value. Here. So X is going to be equal how many people should be summoned, okay? And so we know that 40% of those actually appear. So 0.4 times X actually appear, and then a third of them are excused, okay? So I need, if a third of them are excused, 2/3 of them remain. And when we're done with all that, we're going to get 60. So that's kind of my words to symbols for this. And then to solve this, I wouldn't normally solve it this way, but since I have a calculator, it's 60 divided by the numbers multiplied here, which would be 0.4 times 2/3. And then I could use a calculator to do that calculation. I could also do it in steps like many students would do, but let me just show you on the next one here. So it's x times 0.4 times 2/3 is 60. Solve for x and by dividing, and you can see that we're getting 225. Now, again, students may not do this, but to me, it's the quickest way to do it instead of doing it in steps. And on the Nspire, it would be done similarly. So I don't want to belabor this too much, but this shocks me. Almost on every test is a question like number 24. What rational number is exactly halfway between two fractions or two rational numbers? And I'm just shocked that this is on here, but it is. And you can do this without a calculator. But I'm going to be, again, I'm just trying to show you those kids who aren't sure, and I'm sure there are several of them, how that would look. So again, just get a fraction, add the two, and then divide by 2 in the denominator, okay? I think this is a good way to do it, whether you do it on 84 or Nspire. But I am shocked this is almost like on every single test. Another thing that really shocks me is finding the least common denominator or least common multiple of fractions. It was on, I would say, on every test as well, okay? And for this one here, what surprises me is the calculator does this for you. So I'm not sure exactly what they're hoping to accomplish since this will do it, but we want to find the least common multiple of 15, 20, and 8. And so under math and number, 8 is the least common multiple, but it'll only do the least common multiple on two numbers at a time. So there's two ways to do that. You could do the first two, get an answer, and find the least common multiple with that and the third one. Or I prefer to do it this way, do it all in one step. Least common multiple of 15, comma, and then use that least common multiple again between the last two numbers, which are 20 and 8. So that would be one way to do it. The other way to do it would be, like I said, in two steps. Okay. And again, I'm showing you in case you weren't sure about that. And then also you could do this with least common multiple on the Nspire, which is under the number. Okay. Again, the same thing. So let me stop. Oh, before I do that, there are other items that hide that they could be like least common multiple. We're not going to do these, but let's take a few seconds and read 24 and 23 just to give you an idea of how they camouflage the question. And you can see those are both least common multiple problems, only involving two numbers. And again, you could do this by hand, and that's fine, but I'm just telling you that it is on the calculator, and I'm just shocked that they still have this on here, okay? So let me just pause here for a second. Mike, anything I should be aware of, or anything in the chat that I should be aware of?
I think we're doing good. We just had a comment about asking how to use the LCM on the Nspire, but I think I got it.
Yeah, it's under math and I think it's the first one, in fact.
And then Joshua had a question earlier too.
Math, num, and the fourth one. Yeah, what is that?
Right. Do you know if the proctors check the calculators for programs or apps? I'm not sure what the...
everything I've been told as very few do, and if they do, I don't think they can do anything. ACT and SAT know you're going to do that, but they look at it this way. If you're going to spend all this time looking for programs, you're using up very valuable time. So right. I don't think it's a big deal. Good question, though.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure. All right, so this next one's going to get a little bit more sophisticated mathematics, but we can't pass up those simple fraction things, okay? So this is number 25. I forget what test it was from. Which of the following? Okay, 25. Okay, 25 minutes. What is the solution to this system of equations? Okay. Now, I know you can do this by hand. I know you can, but I want to show you on the calculator. Whenever I teach solving systems, I like to do it graphically first so students can see intersection, parallel, coincide. Okay. And so that it's not a surprise when we get it algebraically. Okay. But so for this one, let's look at this first on the 84. We'll do this graphically. And when I would solve these for y, surprisingly, what I would do is I would probably do it this way. 3y is equal to 6 minus 2x. And then y is equal to 6 minus 2x all divided by 3. That's quicker for me and less work for my students. Okay. And the other one, y would be equal to negative 11 minus x all divided by negative 2. So those would be my equations, not in standard form, but I'm okay with it that they're not in standard form because I just need to be able to graph them. And this is going weird for me. Okay, there we go. So let me do this on both the 84 and the Nspire because I think there's something to be learned on these for both of you. So I'll go to y equals and, oh, geez, I happen to already have those typed in, so you won't have to see me do that. Okay, type them in. And I can go ahead and graph them. And I can either trace to this or I can use alpha trace, I'm sorry, second trace and find the intersection point. Okay. And then they'll say first curve, enter, second curve, enter. And there's only one, so it doesn't matter what I guess. So there's my solution graphically, okay? But I would like to show this also on the Nspire, okay? Because the Nspire does it a little bit differently. Again, I will go ahead and add a graphs page. And if I notice it's ready for function, f of x equals, if I just delete the equal sign, all of a sudden I can now do inequalities and I can do relation graphing, which is a really nice one for this one. So I'm just going to go down to relation and say, I'll just type them in as I see them. 2x plus 3y equals 6. And I'll graph that. And the other one, excuse me, when I press tab, I'm still in relation mode, so I can have the x's and y's on the same side. Equals negative 11. And again, notice I can find the points of intersection for there. By the way, those using Nspire, I hope you know this little trick. I love pulling my screenshot off, okay? On the 84, I just pull off the screen. On the Nspire, there's an imaginary border that goes around here. If you just click with your mouse, left click and drag, it drags off the screenshot, okay? Again, it's imaginary border and just pull it off. So if you knew that, great. And if you didn't know that, powerful, powerful tool, okay? So if you're using the 84, this would be that done this way. If you're using the Nspire, it would be done, the best way to me is with the relation graphing. Now, the other way I'd like to look at it is by using solving systems. And again, I really would not want my students to do this I wouldn't do this using systems on my tests or homework. But for this test, high stakes test, 1 point could be getting in or out of the school, thousands of dollars of scholarships. Okay. So let me show you that in case you've not seen that. There's an app called the Poly Simultaneous 2 app. And the second feature is simultaneous equation solver. And I can go anywhere from a 2x2 to a 10x10, okay? And you'll notice that there's things along the bottom here. Those correspond to these 5 hotkeys along the top. So for me to go next, I'm going to press the graph key. And oh, geez, I lucked out. I happened to already have typed that in. But notice as I type this in, I type a 2. And then when I press enter, it allows me to change this to either a plus or a minus and so on. And then once I've got it, I just go ahead and I want to solve it, which is above the graph key. And when I press graph, there's my solution, -3 and 4. So that's kind of a nice feature as well. And if you're not familiar with it, I outlined the steps on how you get there. Okay, I've got the screenshots to get you there to help you remember how to do that. And the Nspire also has that under algebra and solve systems of linear equations. You pretty much just type them in, press enter, and it gives them to you in brackets, curly brackets instead of parentheses, which I guess there was a reason for it somewhere. But so let me stop there because that one's a biggie. Any questions or comments on that one?
There's a
The app's
question
not low.
from Catherine. I can probably get a hold of that in the chat.
Yeah, and the other thing, Catherine, and for everybody, for something like, you don't have apps and so on, 1-800-TI-CARES will walk you through anything you want to do. I can't emphasize that enough. 1-800-TI. And I'm not pushing that off of Mike or off of me. They'll do a better job than I will. Okay. So thank you, Catherine, for your question. All right. So most used topic on the 4 ACT tests that I noticed from 2021 was if your students can think graphically, they have an advantage. Okay, thinking graphically or thinking by table. And I'm going to illustrate that now. So here's a problem 34. Read it, give you about 15 seconds to think about how you would hope your students would solve it, and I may give you a different way. So go ahead, 15 seconds. All right, so for this one here, I'm going to go ahead and quit this app here. And then how I would like to find the range of this is actually to graph it. And again, I'm hoping my students can visualize this graph. Okay, we're going to talk about families of functions, and I'm thinking they know what this looks like, but we've got students who don't. Okay, they just don't, and we'd like to give them an advantage on the test. So I'm going to type into Y1 the opposite of the quantity, x minus 3 quantity squared plus 4. And then I'm just going to go ahead and graph that, pull that off. And I can see from the graph, the largest it ever gets is 4. So it's 4 and everything below. So some students would grab this right away. There's 4 and infinity. No, it's a wrong direction. Okay. It's negative infinity to 4, G. Okay. And some will say x equals 3 when it happens. And that's why they have the 3 there to get you. And they got 3, 4 is the vertex. I mean, remember, those wrong answers are very well written. Okay. They're called distractors. They're out to get those students. Okay. All right. So that can be done again with the 84, and it can also be done with the, oh, that's right. I wanted to show you this, right? Forgot, sorry. Let me go back. So one of the features that I really like is the graph table mode. So I'm going to go to mode, go down to full and make a right turn and go to graph table and turn on graph table right there, okay? And then let me check my table set. That's where I want it. So I'm going to press second graph because what second graph does is puts me in the table, but shows me the graph. Now watch what happens as I go through the table. I'm going to go down, not so much. Oh, look at this. As I scroll through the table, it shows me where those points are on the graph. And this is, to me, is just beautiful, okay? Such a helpful, especially for the lower achieving students. So graph table mode, if you haven't used it, it has its place. It's a good place to use things. And then also we can do this similarly on Nspire, okay, where I can graph it and see, again, where the vertex is and what the range would be. Nspire does not have the graph table mode like that, okay? It has a graph table mode, but not like that. All right, another one, number 14. Give you about 15 seconds to think about that one. So again, I'd like the students to think graphically. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the go back to the full mode instead of splitting graph and table together. And I'll go to y equals, and let me just type in that equation, that expression, x squared minus 4x minus 45. So I type that correctly, yeah, and then I'll graph it. And then what I'm hoping is that students can make, if you've made that connection and I've made that connection with my students, that the zeros, roots, solutions are all synonymous here. And so I have a solution at 1, 2, 3, 4, -5. Ooh, right there. And if I count out here, that's +9. Ooh, right there. But either one of those is my answer because we're asked to find the sum of those solutions, not the product, by the way. So the answer is 4, okay? But I'm using the graph method to solve that equation, okay? And that's how I would have my students do it first, is to see there's two solutions, and then start making the connection between well, let me just write this. X equals -5 as a solution because x plus 5 equals 0. The factor is set equal to 0. That's why these go together like that, okay? And they make those connections and visualize the solutions. So I can do that on the 84. And again, I think there are advantages to seeing this graphically. Also, we talked about the wrong answers and how they can get you, okay? Similarly done on Nspire, except I found both zeros here, okay, to see that. Another, how would you solve this? Again, I would get it equal to 0, factor it, do that, that procedure there. But it's really, I think, very helpful for students to see how you can do this graphically. So if I want to, let's say, graph x squared minus x in y1 and y equals 12 in y2, I'm going to go to graph that. Oh, I lucked out here. My window isn't big enough. So I'm going to go away from a square window and maybe go this up to 15 so that I can graph it. And then I can go ahead and find the points of intersection, okay? And again, I'm interested in the x values, not the y values. We already know the y value is going to be 12 there. So I can see those ordered pairs that way. Another way I could do this is I could also set this equal to 0 and go x squared minus x minus 12 and find the zeros of those and see again. So I like both. I like the first one better at first because students don't have to do any algebra, okay? They can just visualize the solution. But I like showing that they both work, okay? And similarly on Nspire, except with Nspire, I do want to show this one because we might have some Nspire users that aren't aware of this. So let me go ahead and add a graphs page. And let me just go ahead and type in x squared minus x in one function and 12 in the next function. And again, I'm going to have to change the window. And I just need to up my y to go up to maybe 15. And it won't be square anymore, but I'll live with it. And now to find the point of intersection, you can find all of them at the same time. Even if there were 10 of them, you can find them all at the same time instead of finding one at a time. And the way you do that is with menu, and it's under geometry, and it's under points and lines. Whoops. So menu, geometry. Come on, Reardon. Menu, geometry, points and lines. And then if you'll notice, number 4 is intersection point or points. And what you do is you just click on one graph, click on the other graph, and all of the points of intersection show up simultaneously, okay? And if there was more than 2 of them, all 3, 4, 5, whatever it would be, would show up, okay? So any questions or comments in the chat?
No, just one thing I want to add that Mike Dorsey just posted a nice link that has the apps bundle. So I think you get a bunch of
Oh,
those apps
yes.
all at once. I think isn't
Yeah, good idea.
Polysim in that bundle?
It should be. I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that, Mike. All right. So another one is factoring. Okay. I do like students to make the connection between factors and roots and zeros and so on. Um, so for this one here, if I go to this x squared minus, let's say 5x minus 36, and I'll get rid of the 12 here. And let me go back to my previous thing there. All right. And then if I pull this off, I can see that x equals -4 is a 0, which means x plus 4 is a factor, not there. But notice they could catch you on h. And this is x equals 9, which means x minus 9 is a factor, and that is the correct answer. Okay. Again, I really like teaching factoring, especially factoring like polynomials with, 3, 4, 5 factors, and then start talking about, a multiplicity of roots and multiplicity of factors. That's for another day. But again, on the Nspire, you can find the zeros, okay, and see those as well. This one, I hope you like this as much as I did, okay? This next one here. So let's take a look at that for a minute. So it's composition of functions and wants to know when the composition is equal to 0. Now, usually it's just find the composition and see what it is. Now they're taking it a step further. That's why it's number 53, a 90-seconder, we might call it. So I'm going to go to y equals, and in y1, I'm going to put in x squared minus 4. And that'll be my f. My g, x plus 3, will go into y2. And then in y3, I'm going to type in the composition f of g of x, but I'm going to write it as y1 of y2 of x, okay? And remember, the y guys are in alpha trace. Y guys are in alpha trace, so y1 of alpha trace, y2, and then you don't have to put in the x, but I do like to put in the x. And since I don't really care what the graph looks like for x, y1, and y2, I'm going to turn those off by pressing enter on the equal sign. So I'm only going to graph the composition function and see where it's 0. And so now when I pull that off, I can see that that's 0 at -1 and -5. I could even do the zeros. I could trace to them, whatever you want to do. But on this test, I just want to get an answer fairly quickly and accurately. Okay. Again, do that with the 84. And you can also do it with, oh, no, on Nspire. I do want to show it on Nspire. Sorry. Do want to show you on Nspire, because I think this is something some of you need to know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a calculator page first. And I'm not sure, I hope all of you do this, but if not, there's the very first command on the calculator menu 1 is define. So I can define f of x. So f parentheses of x, close parentheses, equals, and then it's x squared minus 4. So I'm defining that function. It's locked in. And then I'm going to define g of x similarly. And I know you can do it with the assignment statement, but I'm old school, I guess. I like this without the assignment statement. And set that equal to x plus 3. All right. And now I can go ahead and graph that. Okay. So I'm going to get myself a graph. And my f of 3 is going to be f of g of x. So f of g. And you'll notice that f and g are now bold. And the reason they are is because the calculator is telling me you've defined these. Okay. And so now I can go ahead and graph that. And again, I can see, if I pull this off by hitting that border, that the zeros are at -5 again and -1. So, if you knew that or not, but I do want you to know about the define function. This one here, I'm going to do it in a similar way. Okay. It says here's f and h. What is h of f of x? And it asks for this. And if you had a CAS calculator, it would do it, but we're not allowed to use CAS here. So I thought this was kind of cool. See what you think of this. Let me go ahead and clear those out again. So my f is going to go into y1, which is -x minus 4. And my y2 is going to have 2x plus 3. But my y3 is h of f of x, which is the reverse order. So it's going to be alpha trace, where the y guys are, y2 of y1 of x. Okay. And again, I'm going to turn off the other ones. I don't want those to mess up what I'm seeing. Sometimes I like to look at them in a classroom, I would, but on the test, no. And so here's my graph of the composition. And just by process of elimination, it's not a parabola. It is a line with a negative slope. This is the only one. Okay. Now I know this won't always work, but it was one that could eliminate. Okay. So not getting any responses anymore. Are they still there, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So again, you could do this also by using define function. Okay. So this next problem, I'm working on a project that I'm going to ask you about or talk to you a little about at the end. And so I was surprised when I saw this week, this problem here. And that is the square root of x squared. And my video is about the square root of x squared as opposed to the square root of x, the quantity squared. Okay. And just kind of a way to look at things a little bit differently. So again, a lot of my students, even though I've taught them, I thought as well as I could, would go right along with this. They're always equal, okay? And they'll say when they're not equal, okay, maybe 0, irrational. Who knows what they'll come up with, okay? So to me, one of the best ways to show this is to actually graph this, okay? Graph the square root of x squared, okay? So in y1, I'll go back and take the square root of x squared. And let me just go ahead and see if this works. There we go, back to my normal one. And for some students, it's like, are you kidding me? This can't be right, okay? And then after you've been able to discuss it with them, we could then go ahead and graph y equals x, which is what we're comparing it to, okay? And so we can see that for right here, when it's positive and 0, these are equal. But when x is less than 0 or negative, these two diverge quite a bit. They're not the same at all. Okay, so when x is negative, that's when they're not equal. Okay, and we can see that both on the 84, and we can also see it on Nspire. So anyway, I thought that was kind of surprising. So other things we can do is just evaluate numerical expressions, okay? And again, this shocks me that they know we have a device that will do this by us just pushing buttons, okay? So I'm just going to illustrate these because of the time. We're kind of running out of time and have some other things to show you. So I can go ahead and under probability, there's the factorial. I can just type it as you see it and get the answer. So I don't know why they're testing this, but if my students are savvy with a calculator, even if they've never been taught factorial, well, they'd have to know about where the factorial is. They can do this problem. Similarly, where it's found on Nspire. Here's another one that surprises me that they can do. I mean, I love this problem. I mean, it talks about a negative exponent meaning the reciprocal and using fractional or rational exponents meaning roots and so on. And I would love them to be able to do this by hand, okay? Okay, somebody said, where's the factorial on Inspire? Under probability, factorial is number 1. So whoever asked that, glad I was able to catch the chat as we were doing that. So on this one, on the 84, this is what it would look like. It's you just type it as you see it again. Notice how many fraction keys are floating on this test. Just too many. And then on the Inspire, also very similar. Okay. And then get the fraction as an answer as a fraction. Others that we're not going to do, okay, but notice this one uses a square root and a cube root. At the beginning of 2 of the tests, they had very, very simple absolute values. But if you look at the wrong answers, you could see how there'll be kids who go with these. On the 4th problem, oh no, okay. This one's a little bit more difficult, okay. And some of you might say, well, take them longer to type it than it will to do it. Yeah, but if they need to get it right, okay, whatever. So numerical solver, if you're not familiar with this, you need to become familiar with that, okay? So here, again, I would want my students to be able to do this without a calculator whatsoever, okay? However, on this test, I want them to be able to have that advantage. So the numerical solver is under math, and it's hidden pretty well. It's the last one in math. So don't arrow down, arrow up, and it'll take you to the last one because they're kind of a circle. So numeric solver, and then E doesn't stand for equation 1, it's expression 1. It's the left expression, and this is the right expression, okay? Because there's only one equation, okay? And I already pre-typed this in, okay? And once you've typed it in, okay, again, applies to graphs. I'm gonna press graph, not to graph it, but to say those are my 2 expressions that are equal. And now what you need to do is give it an initial guess, okay? And so I usually pick the number in the middle, okay? That there for my guess, I'll just type in 27 and not enter, but solve, which is above the graph key. So now once I've typed in my initial guess, before I press enter, I press graph, and there's my answer, x equals -4. So if you're not familiar with the math solver, the equation solver, become familiar with it. It's also, and I outlined it here pretty well. So if this was your first time, I went too quickly, tried to show you where those things were. On Inspire, it's under algebra and it's numerical solve. This one's a little more straightforward. You type the equation inside the parentheses, comma, whatever the variable is, okay? And then it'll just give you the answer. This one, I'll just illustrate this one. This one here, you actually says how many additional marbles would you get it? So you're now at 3/5. And so I just so you could solve that here, because this one I thought was a little more complicated than I would want for a number 11. And also you could do numerical solve with the Inspire. So there was an average of 2 trig problems on each test in 2021, and I'm just going to show them to you. I had no intention of doing them, but starting off with basic right triangle trig, what's the sine of angle A? Okay. Then applying right triangle trig was one of the questions. Okay. And again, all of these are as a PDF. So if I'm going too fast, you'll be able to come back and I have them all listed. This one shocked the heck out of me. I don't know that I've ever seen the sign of a sum identity on an ACT test before, but it was there. Okay. And notice they're not simplifying it. They're kind of just saying, do you understand that identity? Okay. They had 2 problems on sinusoid graphing. This one pretty straightforward, but easy to miss. This one a little more, a little more complicated. And then law of sines is now being tested or has been being tested, okay? But with exact trig values, the answer is 80 radical 6, which is a little bit of work. And then I wanted to do this one with you with the law of cosines, but again, we only have about a couple minutes left, so I'd like to just illustrate it for you. So if you do this with the law of cosines and label A, B, C, and so on, you can actually type in the numbers and so on, and go ahead and do the calculations. One thing I'd like to point out is if you're in the wrong mode and you type 127 and then put the degree symbol in after it, it will overwrite the radian, okay? Just in case you didn't know that, all right? And another way I like to do this is I prefer to actually type the equation with, or the expression with, the variables, but then store values in those variables and let the calculator do all of the work. That's just me, okay? I just like to do that. And that can be done with the 84 family. I do want to show you this, though, on the Nspire. If you want to change from degrees to radians, see, right now I'm in degrees. If I just use my cursor and click on that, it now becomes radians. So it's so easy to change from degrees to radians on Nspire. That used to be such a pain to be able to do that. But with the new operating system, you're able to just click on it and becomes the other one. All right. Again, we're running out of time. Let's see where we are. Yeah. So I'm just going to show you that we've got the complex. You can do imaginary numbers, and you don't have to be in complex mode. And I show you how you can do that. Similarly on Nspire. And again, I can't believe this problem is on there. I mean, you just type it into your calculator. You have no idea what you're doing, and you get the right answer. Okay. Another one with the powers of I. Again, just type them. It takes a little while to type them. I will grant you that, but you get the right answer, and it is number 55. It is a 90-seconder. These are some test items that I was surprised were on there, so I hope your students aren't. Venn diagrams were on here, okay, to solve problems. There were, I think, 3 of them in the 4 tests. Yeah, so these are the Venn diagram problems. They get a little bit more complicated. Vectors. If you aren't teaching vectors, your students are at a disadvantage. And simple rational expressions, again, not a non-calculator thing, but I remember teaching students this, and to be complicated, get the right, common denominator and all this. This is not that hard, okay? I mean, for some students it is, but it's not as hard as they could be. And be aware that these are not that hard, and get your students to feel comfortable doing what I would call simpler ones, not or simple or simpler ones, okay? All right, so I'm currently working on a quick video project highlighting cool ways to use the 84 CE. The videos are less than 2 minutes. And if you are interested in looking at those, volunteering to look at those and test them and comment about them, you can use a few minutes, maybe for a couple weeks. Just contact me, okay? There's no, whatever you want, okay? But here's the website that I created that has all the stuff. And I think that, Mike, maybe you could put that, I think I gave that to you. You could put that in the chat if you haven't already. But let me just show you there what's on it. So first of all, here's a PDF of the presentation, okay, with all of the Nspire solutions. So if you click on that, it'll be the slides I had, but as a PDF. Okay, here it comes. And quotes there and so on. It's all there. And then also, you can also get the, here's the here's one of the sample tests here. There's 4 of them. There we go. So there are 4 tests. Each one of these will take you to a complete test with the English or reading, the science, the whole deal, and the answers at the end. By the way, pages 14 to 19 are the math problems. The answers are about 51, 50, somewhere in that area, okay? And then here's a PDF of the problems that we did. I collected them all on, I think it's 5 pages. So if you want to start using these tomorrow, you can print them out, give them to your students, or put them up on wherever you put your problems up, okay? And then all of the solutions are in that other PDF that I gave you. And then finally, I always have to tell you about this, families of functions. If you haven't checked that video series out, please do so. Look at the quick reference guide. And if you're in the Columbus, Ohio area, I'm doing a 2-day ACT workshop, August 1st and 2nd. Information's there. Here's all my information. Thank you for coming. And I'm giving Mike like less than 30 seconds to finish. So if you have anything to say in the chat, I'll watch it now. So thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Mike.
Hey, Tom, thanks so much. As promised, we are giving away to one lucky winner a T-Cubed International Conference virtual registration, and tonight's lucky winner is Edie Christopher. So Edie, congratulations. We really hope to see you at the T-Cubed International Conference along with everyone else. To receive a certificate of attendance, go ahead and click the link in the chat window. Also listed is a link for the documents that both Tom and I used tonight. If you really just want Tom's documents, you can go straight to that bit.ly, but I put his bit.ly in my documents as well. So either way, you should be able to get the documents for tonight. And if you're watching this on demand, go ahead and copy that link into your favorite browser to receive your certificate. All right, Tom, I did it. 30 seconds. Thanks so much, Tom, for putting everything together tonight. There's lots and lots and lots of information that Tom gave you in that bit.ly, so be sure to check that out. And thanks so much for joining us tonight. We hope to see you back online next week. Have a great night and stay safe.